We're going to talk first, kind of the first section of our myth busting. We're going to dial in on some of the mythology about off-page. I think one of the areas where maybe the AI, SEO, GEO bros are kind of running a little bit amok is in entity and social and some of the sort of behind the scenes signals that even in SEO for a long time, we've maybe heard rumor that these things are influential. So we'll look at our first myth. And that is only popular YouTube videos get cited. YouTube's been getting a ton of buzz in the GEO space. And again, one of the emphasis seems to be that LLMs like ChatGPT are sort of following a bit of a Google playbook, and they're looking at views or subscribers or comments as a metric to determine who should be ranking in some of these particular prompt responses. What did we find in the course of our analysis here, Patrick? Are we busting a myth, or is there more to it than that?
Uh, it, it depends, I would say. Of course, YouTube is huge. It uses the transcript, and of course, if you search in AI overviews or AI mode, a lot of YouTube videos are popping up because, of course, Google tries to stay in their own infrastructure. We see here, for example, nearly 20 to 30% of AI overviews cite YouTube with video as a source. I mean, it's an easy format to consume. Also, Google announced that you can ask YouTube at some point, so they're also changing the platform itself quite heavily. Yeah, almost 40, a little bit more than 40% of the cited videos from AI have under 1,000 views, and yeah, essentially long form content is more cited than shorts are barely cited. It depends on your search intent, of course, but the goal. So one strategy is, of course, if you produce YouTube videos that match the search intent, that's definitely something that works well. We also see a trend. I can add to that. We also see a trend that there are now even dedicated reviews channel that are completely AI generated, but they get cited a lot, but those channels haven't even tested the product in real, so it just takes it. And so if you focus on clear, good YouTube videos, then you have essentially you can say best time to start it was 2 years ago. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, I would call out here a couple of thoughts, like just to supplement this. One of the principles that we've reiterated throughout this whole webinar series is you have to recognize that most LLMs are very poor, despite being worth billions or trillions of dollars. Most of them bring in very little money. If you're here as part of a company, whether that's an agency or a brand, there's a good chance that you're more profitable and have been more profitable every year for the last several years than ChatGPT or Claude or any of these others. They're really relying on borrowed funds. And we've highlighted the fact that search is one of those areas where they can spend a lot of compute and token resources and not actually have any sort of monetization to back that up. And I think this is one of the areas where the text that you associate to your YouTube videos is really important. Google certainly is advancing its own LLM's ability to interpret video content without necessarily needing text in a way that other LLMs are not. But those other LLMs are just going to have to find a way to incorporate YouTube. And so they look at that text description a lot. We've done some tests on our side. We do think that, again, the emphasis here tends to be for long form because it's a lot easier to index, to crawl, to discover. And again, your true play LLMs tend to be cheaper. So they're not doing as much work to index and crawl the web as maybe Google is. And so they're looking for things that are easy for them to discover and find. That tends to be long form YouTube content rather than the shorts format. And again, they're just going to lean heavily on that text description. And I think that does tend to favor actually some of these smaller videos. One of the things we found was channels that are well established and have lots of views and lots of subscribers tend to do shorter form, more branded, more stylized descriptions. But a lot of the content, again, that gets cited comes from these smaller videos because they're more heavily SEO'd with this sort of intent of being surfaced based on text search. So that's sort of been our findings for it. So YouTube definitely is strong. I think Just sort of looking at long-term strategy, I think YouTube will continue to have a pretty big play, partially because people do trust video more than straight text today, and people desire video more than straight text today. And YouTube as a social platform is a lot more public about its video content for third parties as compared to some other platforms. So expect to see this to be a long-running part of an AI SEO strategy, GEO strategy, but don't forget right now, make sure you're really hammering on that text optimization around it. Myth number 2, you need a Wikipedia page to show up in AI. This is a long-running one. I remember when we first started doing SEO, especially reputation management, back in the early 2000s, everybody was sort of talking about you had to have a Wikipedia page. It still has some relevance in that conversation. But is Wikipedia a requirement, Patrick, to actually be successful at all as a brand or as a person inside of GEO?
No. The short answer is no. I mean, every company wants to have a Wikipedia page. Of course, it's nice. It gets cited a lot. It's actually one of the best linked pages on the internet, I would say, or domains. And essentially, it's one of the LLMs get trained on it, for example. We also have seen that almost 80% of the I recommended tools had a Wikipedia page, but this doesn't mean that you're out of the conversation if you don't have a Wikipedia page. We as Rankscale, for example, we do not have a Wikipedia page, and it's actually pretty hard to get one. So you really need public articles of speaking about your brand and not paid editorials. So it's really hard to get things into Wikipedia and keep it there, because of course you can try to write the Wikipedia article and then it gets moderated half an hour later and it's deleted. So you took all the effort and it was for nothing. But one interesting finding is that those pages, even if they're deleted, they get indexed so fast that they get even cited by ChatGPT 2 or 3 months after they have been deleted. So there we see how strong this could work if you have a legitimate Wikipedia page, for example. So Wikipedia is not a deal breaker. Start with everything around. And if you're ready with your brand to actually be worth for a Wikipedia page, then you can go for it. And actually there's specialized services. Also SEO agencies do that for you to actually check and analyze if this is worth it. Yeah. Jordan,
Yep.
you can see, of course, add something to that.
Yeah. No, we do Wikipedia work for some of our clients, and we try and abide by Wikipedia's editorial guidelines before someone runs off and tries to report me for something. We really do aim to publish content that's valuable, it's encyclopedic, and it's for things that have merit. But I will say, like, one of the places where Wikipedia is very valuable from an AI standpoint is primarily in that reputation management conversation. So if you have a problematic reputation that's being talked about in a lot of third-party sites and you're struggling to sort of get that under control, chances are a Wikipedia page could be really helpful for you in an AI type of scenario. Now, the challenge that we see, and again, the wrong mindset, the place where I'd say this is clearly a myth, is that most prompt queries don't actually lead to a place where Wikipedia makes sense. If you think about a typical comparison type query, find me the best product for this. We've been doing the plus-sized wedding dress prompt. Like, that's not a place where a Wikipedia page actually makes sense in terms of the prompt and the prompt response. It doesn't make sense in a query found out. It might make sense if there is a situation where a user has started with a top-level discovery prompt, has worked their way into more of an informational and kind of a solidification type prompt, like, you've given me this information, now help me flesh this out more. And now I'm into this brand shopping experience. That may be the moment when Wikipedia could be relevant, but you're all the way down the funnel before that actually happens. And for most brands that are doing a good job in their particular market, or as a product provider, service provider, the Wikipedia page, again, probably not super helpful until you get to a place where you have some sort of reputation management concern specifically. And then it can be a helpful trump card for brand searches, for person searches. But again, probably not super helpful when you're actually trying to capture commercial intent. All right, myth number 3, write the best content and AI will pick you. Distribution is secondary. And this is a ongoing myth. I see so much conversation about content quality. And the conversation always sort of gears back to like if you write better content, you're going to rank better. Like and again, like I think I had a video that went live not too long ago where I critique this humanization of our search systems and our AI systems where we think that they are looking for human quality markers when really they're looking at technical things they think approximate that. So give me the myth bust here, Patrick. I might have showed my cards a little bit already, but what was the findings?
Yeah, the finding essentially was that when you have the same article on a third-party domain, it gets cited a lot more. It's essentially, so in a nutshell, it's digital PR is a brand in general is the new play for AI search. So as we see here, the citation rate increased from 8% to 34% with compared on-site to news distribution. Of course, a huge lift. And also Rankscale did its own study last year where we differentiated between B2B queries and B2C queries because there it also changes actually. And what we have found in this, I say, old study now is that B2B queries, the own website plays a bigger role in general compared to B2C queries, for example. So this is always also you have to think about what vertical you're in, what is your ideal customer. Therefore, it might shift a little bit, but in general, third-party validation will always drive AI visibility.
Yeah, we've talked about that as a link building strategy for our B2B customers. One of the challenge that B2B focused entities have is they are less popular at large. And so some of the metrics that drive success in traditional SEO are frankly a little bit gated to a B2B entity unless they become a consumer conversation. And that's not always good. Most of you remember that Coldplay concert where the HR director and the CEO were caught on camera. That's a very B2B company, but they had way more consumer press talking about them after that event than they probably had ever had. And so a lot of B2B companies, it is just a real struggle where there just is less opportunities for this sort of digital PR. And the opportunities that are out there are often proportionally smaller. The publications, publish less content, less frequently, and are seen by smaller audiences. And that does play a role here into success from like an AI standpoint. But to Patrick's point, I think here it's really critical to think about how do you stay in front of third parties in a way that perhaps SEO really didn't require. I would also note the typical sort of do follow, no follow sort of conversation becomes less relevant with AIs than with search engines. And so, sort of traditional SEO links and, press, where we maybe hinged all of that on whether it was a do follow link or not, really it becomes less important. And so think about ways that you can make your brand or your product or your service a part of an ongoing story. And how to stay interesting there is always a really helpful tip. Many of us work in sort of boring industries. If I'm doing garage door repair, not necessarily the most exciting place to talk about. And so sort of getting that link building lift can be difficult unless there's some other way of building interest and keeping your brands in front of people. All right, let's actually dive into links. And we're going to talk about links and authority and whether you can sort of earn a high page rank or a high DA based off of more links faster, better links. So we'll dig into this a little bit. And again, I think a big part of traditional SEO has been the link building component. Some agencies are built solely around links. Do they have a future, Patrick? What's the answer? What's our first myth? Higher domain authority equals more AI citations, and it's a pretty linear connection. Talk me through that.
Yeah, of course. So you would assume that a domain with higher authority has automatically more citations, and it's linear. That's not it's not 100. It's not true, I would say. So of course, authority still. So how PageRank works or how it works nowadays still highly relevant for how to rank in Google, and therefore it's also relevant how AI mode and AI overviews will cite you or mention you. But in general, brand mentions beat backlinks 3-1 in that study. So essentially, the high authority alone doesn't guarantee a citation. Also, all authority metrics we have are somewhat proprietary metrics that try to mimic PageRank, because it's not public anymore how it works in detail, so to speak, or how it works nowadays. So it's an approximation again, and it can, of course, be inflated as well. So if I'm looking for a backlink, so to speak, I'm not even looking at DR, for example, anymore. For me, it's more interesting if the page has traffic, does it rank for anything, and so on, because those numbers could be just manipulated as well. And it's also a huge industry. And the new trend in general is brand mentions. So there are even services out there already where you can essentially buy them via API. So I'm not sure how long this will go well, but right now it works. So you can, in terms of when you have enough money to buy so many brand mentions, you can essentially also turn narratives in AI search right now. There was even an experiment from a French guy that made it happen that he as a person just vanished from results because he essentially created more sources that said this person does not exist. And if you think about certain narratives, I mean, convincing an AI that the Earth is flat is a lot harder in terms of number of sources. But for a rather small person in France, it was kind of easy to manipulate it in such a way. So essentially, also the link type, because we mentioned it earlier, it barely matters. No follow, do follow. Also, we are not 100. We do not exactly know how Google counts it or not counts it. Sometimes they show links in GSC, sometimes they show it not. So also an approximation, but for classical SEO and Google rankings, I'm still convinced that links matter. And yeah, but for AI search alone, of course, brand mentions. There was also a recent study, I saw it today. There was a company that and it was in Ahrefs, that had 90,000 citations in ChatGPT, but was invisible in AI mode and AI overviews. And it's kind of interesting because this page only ranked in Bing and not in Google. So this was kind of interesting finding that they had so much ChatGPT citations, but nothing in Google. So yeah, that's what
Yeah, I think
yeah, sorry. Yeah.
I think I saw this. We're talking about the same study, I think they'd actually been penalized in Google and had been basically washed out. If I remember right, there was sort of a scaled AI content abuse website in the YMYL category, and had been hammered by Google. And then, but still, Bing had not taken similar action, and that was sufficient enough to keep them relevant inside of ChatGPT. Again, like this is one of those areas where I think the evolution and immaturity of LLMs is going to really drive what happens here. So I would, I think this is an area where I wouldn't go so far as abusing the system, because it's likely to be a system that gets penalized later. Again, Google has gotten quite good at penalizing, or even if it's not penalizing, washing out the value of some of these strategies quickly. And I think that playbook is something that ChatGPT especially will begin to borrow from as they see ad revenue pick up. Right now, ad revenue is still sort of an emerging piece of their revenue share and how they're making money. And as that increases, they're going to have to improve the quality of their search result and the quality of their advertising experience. And that means they're going to invest more in trying to cut off spammy, scammy type tactics. They're not there yet. They're still very vulnerable to some of these efforts, but I would say this is actually pretty strong sort of strategy to play, is to be mentioned, to be talked about, to have others talking about you. Again, partially just because the AI is less inclined to be ranking a domain as it is to be sort of looking for a recent source of information on a particular prompt or prompt fan out. All right, next up, we've got our next myth. You must rank in the classic top 10 to get cited. This one is one that causes a lot of fights. I see lots of shin kicking in the SEO subreddit. Some of the moderators have their own opinions they get engaged with. I see people publishing all sorts of different things all around the web. So yeah, I'd love to sort of see how we resulted here or landed here.
Yeah, of course. So the myth is that you have to rank in the classic top 10 to get cited. I would say that's not true because most of the engines, AI engines, make a query fan out and run certain subqueries where essentially pulls from where the LLM pulls from different sources. But what I saw recently, for example, is pretty interesting because Claude in usage is now catching up, and there were already studies that they follow exactly the top 10 search results of Brave Search, actually. So this is kind of interesting new finding, but in general, it's also really possible if you're in the top 20, top 30 that you get cited in an AI overview, for example. So the average page that, or the results that come back from a search query fan out have no search volume. No one searches for that. I mean, no one searches for best running shoes, features comparison, and whatnot is the appended in the end. But you can easily rank for that, I would say. So optimizing for those query fan outs is easy, and you get also easy rankings, so to speak. But top 10 is not mandatory to get cited at all.
Yeah, I think the query fan out behavior is extremely interesting and how that gets structured based on a prompt and based on prompt personalization. And so this is actually a really effective way if you're a smaller brand competing in a bigger space. One of the things that we see most consistently in our testing is that the sort of nature of the query fan out stays pretty similar, not exact, but pretty similar across related prompts. And so even adjusting for individual personalization plan level, it seems like we see a similar pattern of query fan outs. And so, excuse me, and one of the ways that you can sort of find a way to consistently be showing up in a bigger prompt or a bigger keyword, if we're kind of talking traditional SEO language, is to pick one of those query fan outs that shows up most often in a category. And so when you do that well, there's a good chance that your ranking begins to become a part of the story as to why you show up. And until you see ChatGPT and others actually meaningfully indexing and crawling the web themselves, that will probably be sticky. Now, one other caveat, until Google actually loses dominance or starts to lose significant market share on the LLM side, there's still a ton of value in pursuing top 10 ranking in Google in AI overviews because it does have just a massive opportunity still. All right.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about Reddit, everybody's favorite social forum, one of the most abused places online, I think, right now. Some of the richest, fastest rising stars in SEO don't necessarily have a lot of history behind them, but they do moderate good communities and have been able to turn that into a commercial activity for themselves. So Reddit certainly seems like a place you have to be. You can't win in AI without Reddit. That's basically got to be determined, right, Patrick?
I mean, yeah, again, it's a little bit nuanced. I mean, here the myth is busted. So essentially, Reddit is the single most cited domain in AI right now. I think we have mentioned in a past webinar already, but they have a partnership with Google, so they actually kind of used more often because the users love human content, and Reddit is one of the last ships, I would say, where human content is in there, or mostly human content. Of course, this has shifted because all the SEOs are jumping onto the train and releasing stuff on Reddit. But essentially, Reddit is the number one, at least in USA. We have also studies in Germany from Systrix, for example, that kind of shown the opposite for German queries in the DACH region. But on a global perspective, Reddit, of course, has a huge share in sources and is, yeah, I would say a good place to position your brand in the right angle, but it's again, even in my opinion, a longer game than YouTube, because earning trust from moderators, from even your own subreddits can be shadow banned. Actually, we tried it with Rankscale 1.5 years ago, and it was all shadow banned. It isn't indexed, and because it just gets removed, and it was just releasing a study, so nothing advertorial for our brand or something. But there are some people that have good connections or even mods on subreddits. Of course, they have it easier. But I think if you find how to say, a good brand voice that matches Reddit as a community, you can definitely conquer that.
Mhm. I do think like there's strategically, I think you have to think about moderating opportunities. The most I would strongly suggest looking at like the SEO subreddit as sort of an example of that. There's a individual who runs an agency who was, I think, largely irrelevant, but managed to become a moderator there, and now frequently is able to use it to promote his own content, his own studies, and that's been very helpful inside of AI positioning for him. Now, I'm not going to hate the player, I'll hate the game. But if you are able to look at getting involved in an organic moderator community, that can be very, very helpful from a Reddit strategy. I do think it's really important when you do that to make sure you're adding value, because again, if people consistently see you start to abuse that moderator function and you're not finding the balance of good content, valuable interactions, and it becomes more brand promotion, you start to see pushback. Again, something we're seeing with that particular moderator in the SEO has been a lot of conversations independently about him, and he's had to kind of do reputation management to try and correct. So just be kind of mindful of that if you do want to go the moderator route. It does seem to be one of the stronger opportunities. You just have to make sure you're kind of really keeping a close eye on your balance between that. And again, I would also just expect that as Reddit tries to navigate sort of its AI popularity as its own business, expect to see a lot of fluctuations. We've seen large scale content and profile bans in the last couple of weeks. We've seen Reddit go big in the index and back out of the index. I do think that it's likely going to be one where it'll have some staying power because it produces a lot of things AIs like. Just outside of being a Reddit, the content tends to be short form, it tends to be fairly direct, it tends to be updated quite frequently, it tends to have a new piece of content on almost everything, almost every day. There's just lots of things there which are beneficial to Reddit's staying power. And it has some of these, popularity type metrics that can be helpful if an LLM is able to access those. So I definitely think there's some value in sticking with Reddit. And that's actually sort of our next myth that we are, or well, I can got one more myth before we get there. So if AI cites your page, it's recommending your brand. That's number 7. And we busted this one, didn't we, Patrick?
Yes, of course. So essentially, the myth is if AI cites your page, it recommends your brand. That's not true. So being linked and being named are two different things, and and it's different in general. So what we've seen in this study from Sam Rush and Lily Ray is, for example, that almost 62% of AI citations are ghost citations. So you're cited, but your brand is not named, and only 13% are cited and named, and essentially 69% of the time an AI review is cited of a brand. That's the listicle essentially. When you have your self-promotion listicle, Lily Ray pointed out, for example, that your listicle will be used as a source or as a citation, but Google will skip your own brand. So they did something here. And that's what Lily Ray was mentioning. So essentially, getting citations doesn't mean you are being recommended. And of course, it depends again on the prompt and the search you're running, because there could be something generic you want to find out from an LLM. I don't know how to tie a shoe, for example, then it wouldn't recommend a brand for something. It wouldn't even do a web search most of the time because it's confident enough to answer it out of training data. But there are some use cases where a brand gets cited, for example, for after sales question. That it says, yeah, to fix your window, you have to do this and that. And it cites from a window company, but why should the brand be mentioned when it doesn't work, it isn't
Mhm.
needed for the intent, for example?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, and I think this sort of fits human conversation. A lot of times when you confidently recommend something or say something, you don't cite your source for that. At some point, the source made it into your head. You grabbed on to one little fact. And we all know we have that friend who confidently states internet statistics all the time, but he never cites his sources, right? And that's sort of how AIs work. And this is also just a really critical part of evolving your SEO strategy. When you were in Google ranking for a query that a computer could pretty confidently answer, you got a click. And when you got a click, you could then work on the process of actually selling and developing some sort of connection and remarketing flow with that particular visitor. And you can monetize that more effectively. Today, with LLMs, you just don't have that shot. And so if you've had lots of clicks, lots of impressions, good rankings on top of funnel terms traditionally in your particular vertical, chances are it's going to be a lot less relevant for your ChatGPT audience. And so you want to start getting more disciplined about moving down funnel, or again, kind of targeting some of that query fan out behavior more particularly, because that's likely going to be a place where you get to be more successful. And again, like we've touched on this in a prior webinar, it's sort of the listicle type content where you're involved in comparison type shopping. Those also can be pretty strong. All right, now we're coming back to Reddit. We're going to another myth. We've got a nuanced answer here. It's if Reddit is important, I just need to mention and sell my brand in the relevant subreddits. Astroturfing is the nickname for that. What was our finding here, Patrick?
Yeah, essentially, yeah, the play would be that you just sell your brand into relevant subreddits, try to get mentions in Reddit to get cited faster. But it's a short-term game, essentially, because Reddit is against that. And if this will be flagged later, all your money is and presence on Reddit is going away. So if you focused on real community building or community presence, so there are two strategies, in my opinion. You can build your own community or you join a community as a brand. So you work, yeah, that's two different strategies. And as we see here in the studies, that almost two-thirds of the Reddit removals are spam. Over 4.4 million accounts are banned in the last half year. So essentially, there is the 9-to-1 rule. So you help 9% of the times before you even start promoting anything. And yeah, that's essentially it. So build a good strategy for Reddit, and then this will work long term. It's more work, of course, but in the long term, it's the better choice, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, we're really careful with how we manage subreddit activity and user accounts and some branded subs, just because Reddit. I'll maybe make a couple of quick comments. Reddit itself tends to be a little chaotic in how it handles bans and what triggers them. And then individual mods can contribute to some of these things in terms of specific subs. And many of them are using independent bots and independent tooling to help do that. And so you sort of wade into very, very different experiences just based on which subs you want to be involved in. And if you're very focused on a particular vertical for a particular product or service, if you get banned from a particular sub, that can make it very difficult for you to sort of sustain a meaningful presence, especially if you got the brand account sub. So I would highly recommend being thoughtful in how you do this. If you are doing Reddit marketing on behalf of brands or yourself, really seek to provide value unless you're in a place where you are the moderator and nobody can tell you no, in which case, again, still kind of try to find the balance because you may see people actually start to leave your sub anyways and end up someplace else because there is always another sub on a topic inside of Reddit. So, all right, last part of our webinar or last area of myths is sort of looking at reviews in UGC. Let's talk about G2. Let's talk about some of the other popular myths here. So this first one, more reviews and higher star ratings rank you higher in AI. Does that work, Patrick?
this myth is busted. So essentially, the review volume and scores do not move AI or AI answers in general. So here it's tested, for example, review count versus ChatGPT rank, or the star rating versus rank from G2. So here was essentially tested with G2 and Capterra, but also for ChatGPT, this makes sense, of course. But if you're a local business, then review counts on Google definitely are important, and also recent reviews talking about your services in the reviews. So again, it's in my opinion, it depends answer, but for AI, of course, this is busted. So number of reviews are not, also more numbers in reviews doesn't mean you get cited more often, but where it helps is essentially for the sentiment. So if you are in a conversation asking for, okay, what about this brand? Do you recommend that brand for my issue I have, or what service or product I want to buy? Then they go to the review sites and check this in great detail, what the reviews say about the brand, and therefore making the conversation, the conversion in the end, that could help. But for being visible in the first step, it's not uh, not necessary, so to speak.
Yeah, and again, like I think this is it just comes back to sort of the way that reviews get processed into an LLM. I think there's sort of this sense that LLMs first check popularity or significance, and that's like a gateway to accessing reviews. But we're finding in our own testing as they go and look for reviews and the presence of reviews on certain types of prompts, and that's going to be influential if there is a review. And so it's not necessarily about like how many are out there. There's not like a gatekeeping, like you just don't have enough in your industry, you don't matter. Usually it seems like it is really more about the fact that you have reviews. Those reviews are on certain sources that are trusted for that. And then you have a chance to be, have that review content included. Number 10, if you're not on G2 or Capterra, AI won't recommend you. Let's talk about that. And it sort of plays into my comment there before.
Yeah, of course. So it's also it depends. I mean, in the SaaS space, for example, everyone has the profile pages, right? We are on G2, Capterra, OMR reviews. It's just part of the game to be in all these SaaS directories. And it's also really helpful for companies discovering your brand, because with reviews, of course, you get increased visibility there. If you're a category leader, for example, you might get new business here. But in general, we see here, most of the businesses have a Capterra profile. Almost all of them have a G2 profile. And yeah, almost 80% have a Wikipedia page. So it doesn't hurt. Most of them have a free plan, get listed. You don't have to do the premium packages. But there are so many directories. But going with the big, I don't know, 4 or 5 directories for that, it's just also helping getting alignment for the AI to recommend your brand, or have more sources where they can ground answers and better represent your brand more accurate in the end.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I think that sort of reinforces a lot. And you will see, like, people are going to leave the reviews for you. I think there are, if you are getting momentum, getting notoriety or noteworthiness inside of your vertical, so claiming these profiles beforehand is often valuable. You can optimize some of these websites. You get notifications if there's reviews that come through for you. And so I think it's just as a helpful thing to do to make sure you
Yeah.
have just a healthy management of your digital PR. And then again, at some point, there is going to be a likelihood that as your brand gets pulled into these query fanouts, because that happens each step of the funnel, there's a good likelihood that a review, even if it's the only review, is likely to be commented on. And if you have a source that is preferred by AI that's accessible for review content, it's likely to show up. So again, super
Yeah.
cheap insurance, easy for you. And it's just, again, like even in traditional search, these are likely to show up when people search for your brand. So it's a good idea to be optimizing there. Next myth, AI best something answers, pull from everywhere, no sources dominate. Let's talk about this. This is probably behind a ton of the I'm the best SEO agency listicles that are out there, which Coalition is absolutely one of the best SEO agencies. And many other SEO agencies have written listicles to that effect already. Yeah, let's jump into this one.
Yeah, essentially, again, for the SaaS categories, B2B SaaS citations, the top 10 domains search results are most of the time a best of, let's say, AI visibility tools or best of best CRM software and so on. So essentially, those listicles, it emerged into a whole industry, getting into the listicles. They're reselling listicles. We get so many emails who created a best of listicle where Rankscale should be in, for example. But in the end, make connections with those who rank already, try to get in there. You can make partnerships, for example. I can't go into great detail, but Jordan, of course, can help with that. But in general, best of listicles or those aggregators drive huge traffic in the end and recommend huge recommendations from AI engines in general. So go with them. You need them. It's just part of the strategy, in my opinion, nowadays.
Yeah, and I will say again, like expect AIs to find cheap and easy ways to improve their search results. And one of the cheap and easy ways to improve your search results is to weight certain types of queries and certain types of prompt responses towards certain types of domains. It does not take a lot of work. It's a pretty simple, like hand on the scale that ChatGPT can throw in because it's seeing how abused this is. So yes, potentially you can get some traction with this today, but sustaining that traction is very difficult because, again, I think in our last webinar we talked about content that was published in the last 13 weeks is most relevant inside of ChatGPT, I think was our finding. And so every 3 months, do you want to have to be rewriting your new best of listicle content that names 9 of your competitors on your own corporate blog? And you hope that your audience doesn't see it. And like I'm looking forward to the day when I'm doing a proposal response, and my competitor, I can say like, hey, look, they posted us as one of the 10 best SEO companies in their own listicle. You know, we didn't say the same about them. Those sorts of things. So I would say like this is really good, and it's like a key part of your digital strategy for SEO, for AI SEO, is to make sure you understand who these top review sites are. They're going to show up not only for comparisons inside of your own vertical, they'll also show up for your own brand name consistently. And so you kind of get a 1-2 punch and you win on both fronts if you kind of dial in this strategy. And it's also likely to be a little more sustainable. You're likely to show up more frequently in the long run when you have organic strength in one of these sites that is themselves marketing their own organic strength in this particular type of terminology. All right, let's do a recap, Patrick, and then we'll look for any questions. If anybody has a question or comment that they want to throw in, maybe specific to your category, let me know. But let's go through and run through them. We had, I think, out of all of our myths, 11 of them total. I think we ended up with 7 that got busted and 4 that did not. Any particular ones that you would really call out that are valuable to Rankscale, you see you're having some success with, or you see some of the brands that are working with you having some success with, that you would say, like, after our call today, we hang up, you're going to go out and you should do this thing right away?
Yeah, so as you also have already mentioned, I think depending on your vertical of the best of listicles is part of the strategy. I would do that and search for them. You can use a search operator, for example, to find them and start really getting as many sources that mention you as a best in category type of article, so to speak. That's what I would do. Of course, I would also structure the website correctly from the beginning. So it's still, in my opinion, SEO, the basis you need to do. You need to talk about certain things on your website to be considered an expert or something that is rank worthy, so to speak. So just get the basics right. That's more important than ever. Of course, there are some hacks, and we busted some of them today, but getting into the directories, listicle, make your website right, and also get links. Start with YouTube. I mean, there's a lot to do, I know, but if you do a little bit every day, it will work out in the long run and will help you.
Awesome. I think for me, again, like I would say, plan for evolutions in AI search. Look for the things that have really proven themselves in traditional search, and here they're going to be your safe bets. They're going to be the safe investment, unless you've got a massive budget and you can experiment all over the place. I would say if most of us, we wear 10 hats for the brands that we market, and so you have to be efficient. So the things that have proven themselves to be successful over time are likely to continue to have value. So I think that the things like Reddit and YouTube and third-party sites that are strong and focused on reviews or strong and focused on comparison, those are likely things that you're really going to want to continue to invest in. Because again, there'll be strategies that work today, but also probably will work a year from now. All right, that's it for us today, everyone. I don't see any new questions coming in. We'll go ahead and close up just a few minutes before the top of the hour. Enjoy your evening, Patrick, and enjoy your days, everyone else. Bye.